Another day with OpenClaw, but this video specifically is not really about OpenClaw because the work I did today is valuable regardless of which AI system or whatever. I don't know the term for it, but whether I use OpenClaw or not, essentially whatever AI or system or agent I use, this work is valuable regardless, which is especially cool because I'm always afraid of wasting my time on too much looking into one like specific technique or tool for it only to get like deprecated later, or for maybe that technique to just be integrated for the tool to become more simple or improved, or a different tool to become the new one. So it's like an extra meta challenge now. I feel like it's trying to identify the work that's actually valuable regardless of things changing, since things are changing so fast. Anyways, that's a little bit of a blab. The thing I did today is something I've been thinking about before as well, but now I'm trying to concretize it even more. It's to um, identify data that exists about myself, because I want whatever AI I'm using or whatever assistant or system, I want it to intimately, I wanted to know myself. How does it? I wanted to know a lot about me. I wanted to truly understand who I am, what my preferences are, my what my knowledge is, uh, like who the people I know are, what I'm kind of thinking, the way I see the world, and I wanted to know everything. Ideally, I want the AI to understand and map exactly how my mental state of the world is, because the better it understands me, the better the AI can tailor itself to me, the better it can help me think about things, the better it can point out flaws in my thinking or in my maybe incorrectness in my knowledge, the better it can give me advice because it understands me, the better it can point out patterns from my past. The more it knows about me, the more powerful it is. It's not only about knowledge, because there's a separate issue how once you actually have all the data, how do you make sense of it? How do you process it? How do you cross references in a valuable way? Like how do you turn this into actual value? That's another huge thing to figure out. I have no idea, but for now, I'm just focusing on collecting the data. And so, where to start? Well, there already exists a lot of data about all of us because a lot of the devices we use and softwares and tools and companies that we use, they collect a lot of data on us. And I want to make sure now that this data exists and the companies use it, why not use it for myself as well? For example, Google, we all know Google's I don't know main, but a big part of Google and their business is that they build up this incredibly detailed um, model on every single person on what their preferences is so that they can do better targeted advertisement. So if Google understands me so well, then I want my own system to understand me so well as well. And so I'm trying to think about what are all the data sources that exist? Like, what's all the data that exists about me? Where is it? Do I have access to it? Or is it like, does only the company have access to it? Usually, I have access to all the data myself. I'm not sure if it's a global thing, but at least in Europe, I think all the companies are legally required to like give you the possibility to see all the data they have and also export it and get the data yourself if you want to. So I'm trying to make a overview of all the data that exists about me, which yeah. So I'm working on it. This is just a draft. This doc is not finished at all. But we see, for example, we have like Google and iCloud, but these are kind of like broad because there's a lot of things within Google. For example, you have your Gmail calendar, you have Google Photos if you use that, like Google, was it Google Health? I don't know if that's the thing. I have some of this stuff in iCloud instead. Google also has my location history. Uh, they have their like personality thing, which they use for advertisement. Honestly, they probably have a lot of data which I have no idea about. And Google has this Google Takeout feature where you can export all of your Google data or a lot of it. And there's like 50, 60 different categories that you can like take on or take off. Then we have iCloud. Also, a lot of stuff goes underneath there. You have like photos, voice memos, notes, emails, calendar. I don't know. It depends a little bit on what you use it for. Then we have other specific things like I have Notion, which I used for my main notes for a long time. Then I have maybe like OneNote, some university notes from the past, or like old university and school clouds, like office documents. Then we have my journals that I've handwritten. I have digital journals. We have potentially my YouTube history could be a valuable data source because it shows a lot of the information I consume. I consume probably the that's like the main source I consume any information through, except when I'm like researching something actively, when I'm not just like passively consuming information. For me, it's usually YouTube. I'm trying to create a detailed overview of all of this. It's a little bit of a mess right now because I'm just in the middle of the process. I hope I can get to a point where it's very concrete, very clearly defined, and where I feel like I've kind of covered everything. I'm not sure if I can, but I'm at least working on it. And I think this is going to be valuable no matter which way AI develops and which system I end up using because it's just data. And the data is valuable no matter where you put it. First, I need to be aware of all the data that exists. For each of the data, I need to think about, is it actually useful for the system or can I just ignore it? Also, like, is it accessible to me? Can I get it? Is it hard to get it or can I like automate the process of getting it or integrating it with something else? Um, for example, a thought that hit me previously, maybe I have old message logs from Skype when I was using that, chatting with my friends and gaming, like when I was growing up. That data probably still exists, but also maybe I don't need to think about it because it might not be that valuable unless I want to do like a psychoanalysis of my personality as a kid, which maybe I want to do that. I don't know, but not the most important thing. So there's a lot of data. Yes, I need to be aware of what data exists and then figure out whether I can access it. And ideally, I think I kind of want to own all my own data, which means whatever exists anywhere, at least the part that's useful to me. I probably want to either make sure there's like an API connection so that I can interact with it any way I want, whenever I want, or I'm just going to copy it over to my own database or cloud file bucket or just to my computer or somewhere so that I know I can interact with the data as much as I want whenever I want. And it depends on the data source, but I think a lot of these things, they don't take that much like file space. Like even Google, who has a ton of data on you, outside of like photos and videos, I don't think any of the other stuff really takes that much file storage space. Like file storage has scaled throughout the years, scaled incredibly. Now all our phones and computers has gigabytes or terabytes of storage, and then all this data is just like text files and JSON and data points. Like it's all kilobytes, fits easily. I think I'm not sure about all the Google data, for example, but for example, my whole Notion, except for images that I've added in there, everything else, is just text. Even though it's a lot of notes from years, it just doesn't take that much storage space. It's very easy if I want to just make a manual backup or copy somewhere else. And not only easy, but cheap and essentially free because all these, even if you use like a cloud storage thing or a database, they still give you free tiers up to a certain usage. And I just don't think this is going to take that much storage. But I could find out that I'm wrong. I'm not sure. I know photos and videos take a lot, but then I have my iCloud for that. So that's a lot of rambling again. This document is very much a draft because I started with like a Notion document from almost a year ago, from like the summer, where I was thinking about this. And then I've been working with OpenClaw now, because this is probably going to turn into what is going to be like my like ultimate system personal AI. We'll have to see. For right now, I'm using it like that. So this whole chat log is from today. Yeah, we started here. Nope, we started here. And so I've just been rambling a lot, but I'm not saying this. I'm just using the dictation app. There's multiple alternatives for this. So I'm using Aqua just because I got like a good student pricing for that. But there's many alternatives to that. I could also just send a voice message, but I trust my dictation slightly more since I can like see it. But yeah, it doesn't matter really. And so I started asking it to find the Notion document. I wasn't able to find it actually, but I was able to find it myself. And then I just gave it a link. Because it does have actually access to my Notion, but it wasn't in its current state smart enough to actually find this document in my Notion, which is interesting. And big thing is like it has no title, so I was trying to search for terms, but I wasn't able to find it, even though I described the content. And I wasn't sure if the document even existed, but I felt like I think I have a document like this in my Notion from a while ago. So I gave it kind of a vague instruction. I wasn't able to find it. Anyways, I found it. And then we've been going back and forth. What I did was that I looked at this document essentially, and then I just do the dictation as I'm looking at it, reading through and just thinking. And I take everything that I think and I just say it. I just think out loud. I just dump all of my thoughts because I'm trying to capture as many small details as possible. You might not be able to see. I'm going crazy here. There's the dictation thing. It's just running right now. But I don't need to. Yep. And so I use that to. I used it from here. So I'm reading the document and then I'm thinking out loud. And then I tell it, okay, here I thought out loud a bunch while I was reading it. And then I tell it, now let's iterate on the document. And initially, I don't want to edit too much stuff because I'm just trying to get more thoughts out there. And I want to make it like bigger and bigger and bigger before we compact it. Because I don't know yet what the final structure is going to be. It depends on like how many data sources we discover that we might want to include. It's this, I'm essentially seeing this kind of like programming where when you make a program, you don't know the initial structure always. Sometimes you make it, then you want to add on features. Now you realize you got to refactor the whole thing. Then you add on more features. Now you realize you got to refactor the whole thing again because you can like fit it to a broader abstraction. It's kind of like that with this. Even though this is just a markdown document, it's kind of the same thing, I feel like, where I don't know the right level of abstraction and structure yet, and I only figure it out more and more as I go, as I add more features or just do more thinking into it, realize new data sources and things that I want in it. And therefore I'm trying to, at least so far, not decide on any structure. This is nice compared to code that I can actually just dump anything in here and then we can figure out the structure later. So that's what we've been doing. But with all these dumps I'm doing, I'm not dumping them straight in the doc, but I'm asking it to do like yapping for 10 minutes or something. And then I ask it to take everything I said into the document, but just like clean up what I said a little bit because I'm probably repeating myself a little bit. I have some filler words, thinking as I'm saying it, so it's messy. I ask it to clean it up and add it in the document without editing or removing the existing things. So it adds it as a new section here. But you see, it's not a straight like verbal dump anymore. It's slightly organized. But I ask it very specifically to make sure, even though it's like cleaning it up, to make sure to keep all of the information, like every point that I made or uncertainty that I made or just everything, keep it. And this is a little bit risky when I do this thought dump, voice dump strategy because you don't have any guarantee that the LLM actually takes everything that you dump down, and you don't have a guarantee that everything that's mentioned here is actually included here. So that's something I want to experiment with more in the future, is setting up an additional verification step after that uses the same LLM with a different prompt or just a completely different LLM where it's like a separate skill or sub-agent or whatever that looks at what I prompted and the answer that it gave and looks specifically for anything that I mentioned that just got completely ignored and kind of make sure that there's nothing, or points out potentially like the top two things that it maybe missed, and then I can make a personal judgment about it. I'm not sure about that right now. For now, I'm choosing to trust it on this. And that's kind of the reason that I'm splitting it up. Although this is a long dump, I could have done even longer, right? I try to separate it at natural points where I think it's probably going to handle the context well and capture everything. Because I've tried sometimes with even longer dumps, but it also depends on the LLM, which model it is, and kind of how I prompted it. Sometimes I've noticed it's like, for example, I might just skip this part And sometimes I don't notice immediately, but I notice later, and then I realize that's something I thought it covered, but it didn't, and it's frustrating. Um, but for now, I try to think critically about it and what I just said, and I think it has captured every point, although I can't be sure. So I wish I had a verification step that I could trust more. I don't yet, but I do feel like it's capturing a lot of details, so I think it's okay. And then, as it's now written this new section, section number 2, then I again just turn on the um, transcription service as I'm reading it, and I'll just think out loud as I'm reading it what I'm happy with, if there's anything I want to change, or just more thoughts that come to mind as I'm reading it. Usually, as I'm reading it, I suddenly think about another data source that I want to mention, or another concept, or there's just a new thoughts that come which are related. I just say it all out loud as I'm reading through, and then I'll just say with every section, usually if it's okay or if I want to change anything. For the most part, I just leave it as is. But there's usually mostly there's new ideas that come, or something I've just said becomes slightly more clear in my head as I'm reading it. So I've dumped this down, and then again, I could now ask it to. So now, for example, as I've been talking now, it's been transcribing this. So this comes. Give it a couple of seconds. Now this comes here. Um, Now I could ask it to rewrite this, but for this flow for now, I'm still just want to add on more and add on more. I'm gonna rewrite it later. So as I read through that, I made another long note, I'm scrolling down, and then I just pass it again, and then okay, it sees there's some new stuff, and then it makes a new section, section number 3, and we did this back and forth a couple of times, and we ended up with what, 5 sections, and this took almost 3 hours. I had a little bit of breaks. I was like getting some coffee and stuff, so I'm not sure, maybe 2 hours, like actually sitting here either reading it or talking to my machine. And we ended at this, which I feel like was a pretty good final state. I feel like I got a lot of thoughts out around the concept. This process helped me think actively as we were working and iterating on it. And I'm specifically iterating on the document in this way because I previously tried the Canvas feature in ChatGPT or Gemini, which seems to be made for exactly this. It's like a document you want to make, but you don't want to make it just through one prompt. You want to iterate on it. And if you do that just in a chat, then it feels wasteful because you ask for something and it gives you the text, and then you say, no, change this, and then it gives you the whole text again. So it feels like you're repeating, or it's repeating itself a lot, just filling up the chat log. That's why you have the canvas where you can talk in the chat and then iterate on the canvas. But I had a really bad experience with these because I was trying to do this process of dumping a lot of thoughts and having it put in on the canvas. But I didn't notice initially, but I noticed after a while. This was with Gemini specifically, last time I noticed it. It seemed to be trying to keep a certain like total length of the canvas. So I thought we were building this more and more comprehensive canvas over time while still keeping it clean. But what I realized after a while had happened without me catching it at the time is that as I was adding new details and asking it to add it to the canvas, it was just taking other sections and compacting it, but actually just removing important information. Just taking another section, move it like this, so that we could get more space for the new stuff. Um, Not exactly like this, but kind of conceptually like that is what I noticed happening. And so after I did this back and forth a couple of times, I realized like, shit, kind of everything that we noted earlier is kind of lost now. And so the whole point disappeared, where this voice dumping, thought dumping like this is very valuable if you actually capture all of the thoughts or insights, if you can trust the LLM or transcription or both to actually capture it and synthesize it in a way. But that was a method previously where I trusted it to do it, and then it turned out it actually didn't do it. And still, I could find the info through the version history of the document and stuff, but it just starts becoming a huge mess. So that's why I'm trying it slightly different now, this kind of workflow. But now we have this huge document, right? I just added on section, add on section, add on sections. Now there's 5 sections plus the original kind of Notion draft. So now I gotta actually compact this though, synthesize it into something smaller, more compact, also better structured. And now I want to make sure I do this without losing any information. But I mean, I want to use AI to help me do it faster. on a high level, just gonna prompt AI to compress the document for me. But I gotta do that in a way where I can still trust it to keep all the information. And this, I'm not exactly sure how to do because I don't trust the AI to do this, to be honest. I could like ask it to do it and then ask a different AI to look at the original and the compressed version and again point out like what information was maybe lost, and then I can review it and see, okay, is that good or is that bad that information was removed? But I don't know. It's like a little bit hacky, and I don't know a good way to approach this. But I think it's important for a task like this to actually, you cannot just put it on the AI. You need to very much stay mentally present yourself and be focused and think about this and the information. But what I have now realized through iterating, going back and forth a couple of times, is I've realized better what I might want the final level of abstraction to be, or what's like the whole of the document. So I'm starting to build to know where's like the outer boundaries of what information the document is supposed to contain. And once you know that, it's a little bit of discovering it and a little bit of deciding it also. But once you have that, then you can structure it better because you know what it's supposed to contain. You know also what it's not supposed to contain, which you can therefore put somewhere else or just ignore. And you're then able to structure the document with your sections or tables or whatever to fit within the boundaries of the whole. I'm hoping this makes sense. It might sound like nonsense. To me, it makes sense. And so I'm realizing it's a little bit of just making a decision at this point or maybe exploring it more. But I'm thinking that what the scope is going to be is kind of that the ultimate goal is just making a digital clone of myself, essentially, which sounds like a huge task. But essentially make a digital representation of my mental state, of the way I see the world, the way I think about the world, the way the world is constructed in my head. Because then it's not about it being necessarily factually correct, although I do, of course, want my beliefs to be correct, but that's a separate issue. But it's more that I want the AI to understand exactly how I work and how I think, because then it can tailor responses and education and just tailor everything better to me to help us both move faster together. And so I might set that as like that is what we're trying to make, and then you can start within that dividing. Okay, so within that digital representation of your uh, mental state of the world, I don't know which terms to use. Then you can start dividing it in. Okay, maybe there's like a big section is like this is getting too vague at this point. Yeah, honestly, I don't know. I got to do more. I have no idea what I'll say at this point. I got to do more thinking, but this is something I'm working on right now. And the whole like digital copy of my mind is a little bit further away, but within that I can think about what is more concretely achievable right now. Right, I have my emails, message history, I have my files, my journals, pictures, videos in my camera roll, um, my position history, whatever. And some of these parts I can very much start plugging in right now so that the system can understand me better. Yeah, that's the update for today.